The morning sun cast long shadows across Forward Operating Base Jackson as artillery specialist Elena Rodriguez approached the massive M777 howitzer. At barely 5 feet 2 inches and weighing 118 pounds soaking wet, she looked like a child. Next to the 9,800-pound artillery piece that would soon become the center of a confrontation that would define her military career. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson stepped directly into her path, his 6'4" frame towering over her as she reached for the breech mechanism. His voice carried across the entire artillery section, ensuring every soldier within earshot would witness what was about to unfold. "Hold up there, Rodriguez." Thompson's voice dripped with contempt as he gestured dismissively at the howitzer. "This isn't some desk job where you can hide behind a computer screen. Real artillery work requires someone who can actually handle the equipment without getting crushed." Elena's hands remained steady at her sides, though her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She had been assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 5th Field Artillery Regiment just 3 weeks earlier, fresh from completing her advanced individual training at Fort Sill with scores that had impressed even her most demanding instructors. What those instructors hadn't prepared her for was the wall of resistance she would face from soldiers who believed artillery was a man's domain. Thompson continued his public humiliation, his voice growing louder as more soldiers gathered around. "The gun pit. Look at her," he laughed, pointing at Elena's compact frame. "She probably can't even lift a 155mm shell, let alone load it under pressure. What happens when we're taking incoming fire and need someone who can actually perform?" Specialist Jake Morrison, one of Thompson's closest allies in the battery, joined the verbal assault. "I heard she scored high on some written tests," he said with mock admiration. "Too bad combat isn't multiple choice. When Taliban mortar start dropping, those book smarts won't help her hump ammunition or maintain operational tempo." The circle of soldiers around them grew larger, some nodding in agreement with Thompson's assessment, others remaining silent but making no move to defend Elena. Private First Class Danny Sullivan, barely 19 and eager to gain acceptance from the senior enlisted men, decided to add his own commentary. "My recruiter told me artillery was where real soldiers went to make things explode," Sullivan said, drawing chuckles from the crowd. "Guess standards are dropping if they're letting anyone in now. Next thing you know, they'll be assigning cook duty to people who can't reach the stove." Elena's eyes swept across the faces surrounding her, cataloging each expression of amusement, agreement, or uncomfortable silence. She had encountered skepticism before, but never such organized public dismissal. The weight of representing not just herself, but every woman who might follow in her footsteps, settled heavily on her shoulders. Thompson wasn't finished. He walked around Elena in a slow circle, his voice taking on the tone of a drill instructor addressing a failing recruit. "Artillery requires physical strength, mental toughness, and the ability to perform under extreme stress. It's not about being politically correct or meeting diversity quotas. It's about putting warheads on foreheads and bringing our people home alive." He stopped directly in front of her, invading her personal space with deliberate intimidation. "When lives are on the line, when American soldiers are counting on accurate fire support, do you really think someone your size can deliver? Do you honestly believe you belong here?" The question hung in the desert air like a challenge waiting to be answered. Elena looked Thompson directly in the eyes, something that seemed to surprise him given his expectation of submission or retreat. Her voice, when she finally spoke, carried none of the uncertainty he had hoped to provoke. "I'll do my job, Staff Sergeant," she said simply, "same as everyone else." The response only seemed to fuel Thompson's determination to break her resolve. "Your job?" he repeated mockingly. "Your job is whatever I tell you it is." And right now I'm telling you that real artillery work is too dangerous for someone who looks like they belong in a recruiting poster instead of a combat zone. Sergeant First Class Robert Hayes, the section chief responsible for the gun crew, emerged from the Tactical Operations Center where he had been monitoring radio communications. His weathered face showed the strain of a career soldier dealing with personnel conflicts during operational deployments. Hayes had hoped to avoid this confrontation, but Thompson's escalating rhetoric left him no choice but to intervene. "What's the situation here?" Hayes asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Thompson straightened to attention, his voice shifting to the crisp military bearing expected when addressing a superior. "Just ensuring our newest team member understands the physical demands of artillery operations, Sergeant. Making sure she's properly integrated into the unit." Hayes's expression remained neutral, but his eyes swept across the gathered soldiers with obvious disapproval. "Integration happens through training and performance, not through public discussions about who belongs where. Everyone return to your assigned duties." The crowd began to disperse, but Thompson held his ground. "With respect, Sergeant Hayes, this isn't about integration. It's about operational capability. When we're supporting infantry units under fire, there's no room for personnel who can't meet the physical requirements." Hayes stepped closer to Thompson, lowering his voice, but ensuring Elena could still hear his words. "Specialist Rodriguez completed the same artillery training as everyone else in this unit. Her test scores exceeded the requirements, and her instructors recommended her for advanced assignments. Until she proves otherwise through actual performance, she's a qualified artillery specialist." Thompson's face reddened, but he couldn't directly challenge a superior's assessment without risking disciplinary action. Instead, he shifted tactics, addressing Elena with barely concealed hostility. "Fine," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Let's see what all that training actually means in the real world. Tomorrow morning, we're conducting live fire exercises. Full combat load, rapid deployment, sustained operations. Hope you've been working out, Rodriguez, because theoretical knowledge won't help you when you're handling 50-pound shells for 6 straight hours." Elena nodded calmly, though internally she felt the familiar surge of determination that had carried her through every challenge in her military career. "I'll be ready, Staff Sergeant." Thompson's smile held no warmth as he turned to address the remaining soldiers. "Make sure you are," he said. "Because in artillery, there's no participation trophy. Either you can do the job, or you become a liability that gets people killed." As Thompson walked away, Elena became aware of the weight of dozens of eyes still watching her every move. Some faces showed curiosity about how she would handle the pressure. Others displayed skepticism about her chances of success, and a few revealed outright hostility at her presence in what they considered their exclusive domain. Specialist Maria Santos, one of only 3 other women in the entire forward operating base, approached Elena after the crowd had mostly scattered. Santos worked in communications and had witnessed similar confrontations during her own early deployment days. "That was rough," Santos said quietly, glancing around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "Thompson's been here for 3 tours. He's got influence with a lot of the guys, and he doesn't make things easy for anyone he thinks doesn't belong." Elena appreciated the gesture of solidarity, but she also recognized the risk Santos was taking by associating with her during this tense period. "I can handle it," she replied. "I didn't come here expecting it to be easy." Santos nodded, understanding the complex dynamics that made open support difficult in such environments. "Just be careful," she warned. "Thompson's not just about public humiliation. He has ways of making operations difficult for people he wants gone. Equipment malfunctions, duty roster manipulations, training exercises designed to highlight weaknesses. He's creative." The warning proved prophetic as Elena discovered over the following hours. Her assigned gear mysteriously went missing from the supply room, forcing her to spend precious preparation time tracking down replacement items. The ammunition she needed for morning exercises was relocated to a different storage area without notification, requiring additional physical exertion to retrieve and transport heavy shells across the base during the evening maintenance period. Elena found that her assigned tools had been replaced with damaged alternatives that made routine cleaning and inspection tasks significantly more difficult. When she reported the issues to Sergeant Hayes, he promised to investigate, but warned that proving deliberate sabotage would be nearly impossible. Military equipment fails, Hayes explained with obvious frustration. Gear gets misplaced during operations. Without witnesses or evidence of intentional interference, it's just bad luck and administrative confusion. Elena understood the subtext of his statement. She was on her own, facing an opponent who had home field advantage and years of experience in undermining unwanted personnel. Thompson had carefully crafted his campaign to stay within the boundaries of plausible deniability, while maximizing pressure on his target. As evening settled over the forward operating base, Elena sat alone in her quarters, methodically cleaning her personal weapon and reviewing technical manuals for the morning's exercise. The familiar ritual of weapon maintenance helped center her thoughts and prepare mentally for the challenges ahead. Through her window, she could see soldiers gathering around Thompson near the dining facility, their animated conversation. Occasional laughter suggesting they were discussing her situation. The isolation was complete and intentional, designed to make her feel outnumbered and outmaneuvered before the real test began. Elena's phone buzzed, with a text message from her younger brother Luis, currently serving with an infantry unit in Germany. His message was brief but perfectly timed. Heard you made it to Fogue Jackson. Dad would be proud. Show them what Rodriguez women are made of. The reference to their father, a Vietnam veteran who had died when Elena was 16, reminded her of the conversations that had shaped her decision to join the military. He had spoken often about proving yourself through actions rather than words, about the respect earned through competence and dedication rather than demanded through rank or privilege. Tomorrow's live fire exercise would be her first opportunity to demonstrate that his lessons had taken root in more than just memory. As she drifted off to sleep, Elena's last conscious thought was not about the challenges awaiting her, but about the artillery piece she would soon command and the precision required to make it an extension of her own will, preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The confrontation with Thompson had established the battle lines, but the war for respect and acceptance was just beginning. Elena had faced skepticism before, but never with such high stakes or such organized opposition. Tomorrow would determine whether her training and determination were sufficient to overcome not just the technical challenges of artillery operations, but the human obstacles placed deliberately in her path. Staff Sergeant Thompson had made his position clear. Elena Rodriguez didn't belong in artillery, and he would use every tool at his disposal to prove that point. What he didn't yet understand was that Elena had spent her entire life preparing for exactly this type of challenge, and she had no intention of backing down or seeking an easier assignment. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not just Elena's technical skills, but her mental toughness, physical endurance, and ability to perform under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. Thompson believed he held all the advantages, but Elena carried something he couldn't account for, the quiet confidence of someone who had never been given anything she hadn't earned, and who had learned long ago that proving doubters wrong was simply another form of artillery precision. Elena's journey to forward Operating Base Jackson began 15 years earlier in the dusty border town of Laredo, Texas, where her father Miguel Rodriguez worked as a precision machinist at a small manufacturing plant that produced components for military contractors. The Rodriguez family lived in a modest single-story house on Maple Street, where the sound of freight trains crossing the international bridge provided a constant reminder of the world beyond there. Neighborhood. Miguel had served 2 tours in Vietnam as an artillery forward observer, a role that required mathematical precision under extreme pressure. After his discharge, he channeled that same meticulous attention to detail into his civilian career, earning a reputation for producing parts that exceeded military specifications. His colleagues often joked that Miguel could measure tolerances to within thousandths of an inch, using nothing but his experienced eye and steady hands. When Alina was 8 years old, she began accompanying her father to his weekend workshop behind their house, where he restored classic cars and built custom furniture with tools arranged in perfect order. Miguel recognized something special in his daughter's ability to visualize complex mechanical relationships and her natural understanding of how forces and pressures affected different materials. "Mia," he would tell her as they worked together, "on intricate projects, precision isn't about being perfect. It's about understanding exactly what you're trying to accomplish and having the patience to get there step by step." Those weekend sessions became Elena's favorite part of childhood. While other children played video games or watched television, she learned to operate drill presses, lathes, and milling machines under her father's careful supervision. By age 12, she could fabricate parts that professional machinists would have been proud to claim as their own work. Miguel's lessons extended beyond technical skills into philosophy and character development. He spoke often about his military service, not with bravado or war stories, but with quiet reflections on responsibility and the weight of decisions made under pressure. His role as a forward observer had required him to coordinate artillery strikes with mathematical precision, knowing that errors could result in friendly fire casualties or mission failures. In artillery, Miguel explained during one of their workshop sessions, there's no such thing as close enough. Either your calculations are exact or people die. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being right when everything depends on it. Elena absorbed these lessons naturally, developing an almost obsessive attention to detail that her teachers initially mistook for perfectionism. In reality, she was learning to approach every task with the systematic thoroughness her father had demonstrated throughout his career. Her high school mathematics and physics instructors quickly recognized her exceptional spatial reasoning abilities and encouraged her to consider engineering programs at major universities. The Rodriguez family's financial situation, however, made college tuition a distant dream rather than an immediate possibility. Miguel's machinist salary provided a comfortable but modest living, and Elena's mother, Carmen, worked part-time at a local elementary school to supplement their income. When Elena expressed interest in higher education, her parents supported her ambitions, but couldn't provide the financial resources necessary for expensive degree programs. Elena discovered military recruitment opportunities during her junior year of high school when a National Guard artillery unit visited her school during a career fair. The recruiting sergeant, Staff Sergeant Patricia Williams, immediately recognized Elena's potential when she correctly answered complex ballistics questions that most adults would have found challenging. "Have you ever considered military service?" Williams asked after Elena had demonstrated an intuitive understanding of trajectory calculations. "The Army has some of the most advanced artillery systems in the world, and we're always looking for people who can think mathematically under pressure." Elena's initial response was cautious. She had grown up hearing her father's measured descriptions of military life, including the challenges and sacrifices required for effective service. Miguel had never discouraged her from following his path, but he had been honest about the demands of military culture and the additional obstacles faced by women in traditionally male-dominated roles. Williams arranged for Elena to visit the local National Guard armory, where she encountered her first modern artillery piece, an M119A3 lightweight howitzer that represented decades of technological advancement beyond the systems her father had worked with in Vietnam. The precision engineering and sophisticated fire control systems fascinated Elena, who quickly grasped the mathematical relationships between propellant charges, projectile weights, and target distances. During that initial visit, Elena met Sergeant First Class Michael Chun, a 15-year artillery veteran who had served multiple combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Chun's approach to recruitment differed significantly from typical military advertising, focusing on technical challenges rather than adventure or patriotism. Artillery is applied mathematics in real time, Chun explained as he demonstrated the howitzer's digital fire control system. You're solving complex equations while people are shooting at you, coordinating with multiple units simultaneously, and maintaining equipment that has to work perfectly under the worst possible conditions. Chun's description resonated with Elena's systematic approach to problem solving and her desire to work in a field where precision and technical competence were valued above all other considerations. When she learned about the advanced training opportunities available through military service, including potential assignments to cutting-edge research and development programs, her decision crystallized. The conversation with her parents that evening marked a turning point for the entire Rodriguez family. Miguel listened carefully as Elena described her visit to the armory and her growing interest in military artillery systems. His response reflected the complex emotions of a combat veteran watching his daughter consider following his path. The military gave me discipline, technical training, and a sense of purpose, Miguel said slowly. It also showed me things I wish I had never seen and put me in situations where there were no good choices, only necessary ones. Carmen's concerns focused on safety and the separation that military service would impose on their close-knit family. You're so young, Elena, she said with obvious emotion. There's time to explore other options, other ways to use your talents that don't involve putting yourself in danger. Elena understood her mother's fears, but she also recognized an opportunity to build upon her father's legacy while pursuing her own ambitions. The military offered not just career training, but a chance to serve something larger than herself, to apply her technical skills in situations where precision could save lives rather than simply meeting manufacturing specifications. Over the following months, Elena threw herself into physical preparation for military service with the same systematic approach she applied to everything else. She joined the high school cross-country team to build cardiovascular endurance, spent hours in the weight room developing functional strength, and studied military history to understand the role of artillery in modern warfare. Her preparation extended beyond physical conditioning into intensive self-study of ballistics, meteorology, and advanced mathematics. Elena checked out every book the local library had on military technology and spent countless hours online researching artillery systems used by different branches of the armed forces. She wanted to arrive at basic training with more than just enthusiasm and good intentions. Miguel supported his daughter's preparation by sharing technical knowledge from his own military experience. He taught her to read topographical maps, calculate range and deflection corrections, and understand how environmental factors affected projectile flight paths. These after-dinner tutorial sessions became precious opportunities for father and daughter to connect over shared interests and values. Remember, Miguel told her during one of their final sessions before her departure for basic training, the military will teach you procedures and regulations. But understanding the why behind those procedures, that's something you have to develop yourself. Never stop asking questions, and never assume that the way things have always been done is necessarily the best way. Elena's performance at Fort Leonard Wood during basic combat training exceeded every standard and surprised instructors, who had grown accustomed to recruits requiring extensive motivation and remedial instruction. Her physical fitness scores ranked in the top 5% of her class, but it was her leadership potential and technical aptitude that caught the attention of senior drill sergeants, When the time came to select advanced individual training specialties, Elena's first choice was field artillery, specifically requesting assignment to the most challenging technical programs available. Her aptitude test scores qualify her for nearly any military occupation, but she remained focused on the path that would allow her to combine her mathematical abilities with her father's legacy of precision under pressure. Fort Sill, Oklahoma, became Elena's home for 16 weeks of intensive artillery training that would transform her theoretical knowledge into practical expertise. The curriculum covered everything from basic gunnery procedures to advanced fire direction techniques, with each phase building upon previous learning in increasingly complex scenarios. Elena's instructors quickly recognized her exceptional capabilities, not just in academics but in the intuitive understanding of ballistics that separated competent artillery soldiers from truly gifted ones. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Martinez, a career artilleryman with 12 years of experience, became Elena's mentor and advocate during the most challenging phases of training. "I've trained hundreds of artillery specialists," Martinez told Elena during a counseling session near the end of her program. "Most of them learn the procedures well enough to do their jobs safely and effectively. But you understand the science behind the procedures. That's rare, and it's exactly what the Army needs in its most advanced units." Martinez's recommendation secured Elena a slot in the Advanced Fire Direction Specialist course, an elite program that prepared selected soldiers for assignment to high-priority units requiring the most sophisticated artillery capabilities. Additional training focused on digital fire control systems, multi-domain operations, and the integration of artillery support with special operations forces. Elena graduated from Fort Sill with honors and orders to the 2nd Battalion, 5th 10th Field Artillery Regiment, a unit with a distinguished combat record and reputation for operational excellence. Her instructors' evaluations praised her technical competence, leadership potential, and ability to maintain accuracy under simulated combat stress. What those evaluations couldn't capture was the quiet confidence Elena had developed through years of systematic preparation and her father's patient guidance. She understood that technical knowledge alone wouldn't guarantee success in her new assignment, but she felt prepared for whatever challenges awaited her at Forward Operating Base Jackson. Phone call to her parents the night before her deployment carried a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Miguel's voice reflected pride in his daughter's achievements, but also concern about the realities she would soon face in a combat environment. "Remember what we talked about," he told her during their final conversation. "Prove yourself through your work, not through arguments or confrontations. Let your accuracy speak for itself." Elena promised to stay in touch and assured her parents that her training had prepared her for military life. What she couldn't have anticipated was the systematic resistance she would encounter from soldiers who questioned her presence in artillery. Regardless of her qualifications or performance. As her transport aircraft approached Forward Operating Base Jackson, Elena reviewed her technical manuals one final time and mentally prepared for the transition from training environment to operational reality. She carried with her not just military skills and theoretical knowledge, but her father's legacy of precision and her own determination to excel in the most demanding situations. The confrontation with Staff Sergeant Thompson would be just the first test of Elena's resolve, but it would not be the last. She understood that earning respect in her new unit would require more than just competent performance. It would demand excellence sustained under the most intense scrutiny and pressure her career had yet provided. The harassment began before dawn the next morning when Elena discovered her combat boots had been moved from their assigned locker to the supply room's back corner, buried beneath outdated camouflage netting that hadn't been used in years. The deliberate placement meant she would be late for the 050 formation, unless she abandoned proper uniform standards or missed the morning briefing entirely. Elena chose neither option. She retrieved her boots quickly, cleaned them to regulation, standards despite the time pressure, and arrived at formation exactly on time. Staff Sergeant Thompson's expression showed disappointment at her punctuality, but he said nothing that could be overheard by Sergeant First Class Hayes, who was conducting the morning accountability. The pattern established itself immediately. Elena's assigned duties mysteriously expanded to include tasks typically distributed among multiple soldiers. She found herself responsible for cleaning weapons belonging to soldiers who claimed their gear had been accidentally mixed with hers. During the previous day's training, her mealtimes were interrupted by sudden requirements to complete inventory checks or equipment inspections that never seemed to yield any actual discrepancies. Specialist Morrison took particular pleasure in creating administrative obstacles that consumed Elena's off-duty time. He volunteered her for additional training programs without consulting her schedule, then expressed mock concern when she couldn't attend optional briefings due to conflicts with mandatory assignments he had created. The elaborate scheduling manipulations required careful coordination, suggesting Thompson's campaign had expanded beyond individual harassment into organized unit-wide resistance. "Rodriguez," Morrison called out during a particularly busy afternoon. "You missed the cultural awareness seminar yesterday. Command wants a written explanation for your absence, plus a makeup session that happens to conflict with tonight's equipment maintenance window." Elena recognized the trap immediately. Attending the makeup session would leave her artillery piece improperly maintained, providing grounds for legitimate criticism of her professional standards. Missing the session would generate paperwork documenting her failure to comply with training requirements. Either choice offered Thompson ammunition for future confrontations. "I'll complete the maintenance first," Elena replied calmly, "then attend the next available seminar session." Morrison's smile suggested he had anticipated this response. "Unfortunately, the next session isn't scheduled for 2 weeks, and Command needs that written explanation tomorrow morning. Hope you're good at writing reports, because this one needs to be comprehensive." The bureaucratic harassment represented just one dimension of Thompson's multifaceted campaign. Physical obstacles appeared with increasing frequency and sophistication. Elena's assigned ammunition loads mysteriously increased beyond standard requirements, forcing her to transport heavier weights over longer distances during training exercises. Her equipment developed mechanical problems that required extensive troubleshooting, consuming time that other soldiers used for rest or personal maintenance. During a particularly demanding field exercise, Elena discovered that her radio batteries had been replaced with nearly depleted units that failed during critical communication windows. The malfunction left her isolated from Fire Direction Center updates and unable to receive targeting information when her turn came to demonstrate gunnery procedures. Thompson used the communication failure to justify removing her from the exercise rotation, citing safety concerns about artillery operations without proper coordination. "Can't have someone operating a howitzer when they can't maintain basic radio contact," Thompson announced to the assembled artillery section. "Artillery safety depends on communication, and Rodriguez just proved she can't handle that fundamental requirement." Sergeant Hayes investigated the radio malfunction and discovered the battery substitution, but proving intentional sabotage remained impossible without witnesses or direct evidence. The incident report documented equipment failure and recommended additional communication training for Elena, creating an official record that supported Thompson's narrative about her professional deficiencies. The psychological pressure intensified as other soldiers began distancing themselves from Elena to avoid becoming targets themselves. Conversations ceased when she entered common areas, and her attempts to participate in normal social interactions were met with polite but obvious discomfort. The isolation was carefully orchestrated to make her feel like an outsider whose presence disrupted unit cohesion. Private Sullivan, eager to maintain his standing with Thompson's group, began spreading rumors about Elena's training performance and qualifications. His stories grew more elaborate with each retelling, eventually claiming that Elena had received special treatment during artillery school because of political pressure to increase female representation in combat units. "I heard from a guy who knows someone at Fort Sill," Sullivan whispered loudly enough for Elena to overhear, "that she barely passed the gunnery exams and got moved through anyway because they needed the numbers. Makes you wonder what other corners were cut." The rumors spread through the forward operating base with viral efficiency, reaching soldiers and other units who had no direct knowledge of Elena's actual capabilities. Her interactions with personnel outside the artillery section became strained as questions arose about her qualifications and the circumstances of her assignment to such a prestigious unit. Elena's responses to these challenges revealed the mental toughness her father had helped develop through years of patient instruction. She documented each incident of harassment or sabotage in a private notebook, maintaining detailed records without filing formal complaints that would escalate the situation beyond her ability to control. Her approach remained professional and methodical, focusing on task completion rather than interpersonal conflicts. The most insidious aspect of Thompson's campaign involved undermining Elena's confidence through systematic exclusion from informal learning opportunities. Artillery soldiers traditionally shared tactical knowledge through casual conversations during equipment maintenance or downtime between missions. Thompson's influence ensured that these valuable exchanges stopped whenever Elena approached, denying her access to practical insights that supplemented formal training. When Elena attempted to study technical manuals during her limited free time, Morrison and his associates created distractions that made concentration nearly impossible. They conducted unnecessarily loud conversations nearby, played music at volumes that violated base regulations, or staged artificial emergencies that required Elena's immediate attention for problems that dissolved upon investigation. The harassment extended beyond forward operating base Jackson through social media platforms where artillery soldiers from different units shared professional experiences and technical discussions. Elena's attempts to participate in online forums were met with dismissive comments about her experience level and knowledge base, often from soldiers who had never met her, but had heard Thompson's version of events through informal networks. Anonymous messages began appearing on professional discussion boards questioning Elena's presence in artillery and suggesting that political correctness had compromised military standards. The posts were carefully crafted to avoid directly mentioning her name while making their target unmistakably clear to anyone familiar with recent personnel assignments to Thompson's unit. Elena's family noticed changes in her phone calls home, though she carefully avoided specific details about the harassment campaign. Her conversations with Miguel became shorter and more focused on technical questions rather than personal experiences. Carmen sensed her daughter's emotional strain, but received only reassurances that deployment life required adjustment periods for everyone. "How are your fellow soldiers treating you, Mia?" Miguel asked during one of their weekly conversations, his parental instincts detecting stress beneath Elena's carefully controlled responses. "It's challenging," Elena admitted carefully, "but nothing I wasn't expecting. Some people need time to get used to change." Miguel's military experience helped him read between the lines of his daughter's diplomatic language. "Remember what we discussed about proving yourself through performance," he said gently. "Sometimes the best response to doubters is simply doing your job better than anyone expects." The advice resonated with Elena's fundamental approach to conflict resolution, but implementing it became increasingly difficult as Thompson's campaign expanded to include direct interference with her job performance. During live fire exercises, her assigned duties were modified at the last minute, preventing her from demonstrating the gunnery skills that represented her greatest strength. Thompson developed a pattern of assigning Elena to support roles during artillery demonstrations, ensuring she remained visible to observers while keeping her away from actual gun crew positions, where her competence might become apparent. She found herself relegated to ammunition supply duties or communication relay functions that showcased her physical limitations rather than her technical expertise. The systematic exclusion from primary artillery functions served Thompson's larger narrative about Elena's unsuitability for combat operations. Each exercise that concluded without her direct participation in gunnery procedures reinforced the impression that she couldn't handle the demands of her assigned specialty. The perception became self-reinforcing as soldiers who hadn't witnessed her capabilities accepted Thompson's characterizations as established fact. Elena's situation deteriorated further when Thompson began scheduling her for conflicting duties during crucial training periods. She would receive orders to attend administrative briefings at exactly the same time her artillery section conducted advanced firing procedures, forcing her to choose between professional development opportunities and direct compliance with superior orders. The scheduling conflicts created documentation showing Elena's absence from important training events, regardless of the reasons for her unavailability. Thompson used these records to justify excluding her from more advanced exercises, arguing that her irregular attendance made her unsuitable for complex operations, requiring consistent team coordination. The campaign's effectiveness depended not just on Thompson's creativity, but on the passive cooperation of soldiers, who chose not to intervene despite recognizing the injustice of Elena's treatment. Their silence enabled the harassment to continue and escalate, creating an environment where organized persecution could flourish without accountability. Even soldiers who privately sympathized with Elena's situation felt constrained by military hierarchy and unit dynamics that discouraged challenging the established order. Speaking out would require moral courage that few were prepared to demonstrate, particularly when doing so might redirect Thompson's hostility toward themselves. Elena understood these dynamics from her father's stories about military culture and the pressures that shaped individual behavior within rigid institutional structures. She didn't expect rescue from colleagues who had their own careers and relationships to protect. Instead, she focused on maintaining her professional standards while waiting for an opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities under circumstances that Thompson couldn't manipulate or control. That opportunity would come sooner than anyone expected, but not in the form Elena had anticipated. The systematic campaign designed to drive her away from artillery would ultimately create the conditions for a demonstration of precision and courage that would redefine everyone's understanding of what she represented to the unit and the mission. They served together. The crisis that would change everything began at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning when the Tactical Operations Center received an urgent priority message from higher command. Intelligence analysts had identified a significant enemy stronghold approximately 12 kilometers northeast of forward operating base Jackson, and immediate artillery support was required for a dawn assault by Special Operations Forces. Captain Rebecca Matthews, the battery commander, burst into the sleeping quarters with an urgency that instantly woke every soldier in the artillery section. Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone who had just received orders that could determine the success or failure of a critical mission. "Full alert status, people," Matthews announced, her flashlight sweeping across bunks as soldiers scrambled to their feet. "We have a time-sensitive target and friendly forces depending on our fire support. I need gun crews ready for immediate deployment in 30 minutes. Elena was already reaching for her combat gear when Thompson's voice cut through the organized chaos of soldiers preparing for emergency operations. His tone carried the authority of someone accustomed to making personnel decisions during crisis situations. "Rodriguez stays behind for base security," Thompson declared without consulting Captain Matthews or Sergeant Hayes. "This mission requires experienced gun crews, and we can't afford training mistakes when lives are on the line." The statement hung in the pre-dawn darkness like a challenge to Elena's competence and professional standing. Other soldiers paused in their preparations, recognizing the significance of being excluded from such an important operation. Elena felt the weight of months of systematic harassment crystallizing into this single moment of public rejection. Captain Matthews, focused on mission requirements rather than internal unit politics, barely registered Thompson's comment as she reviewed targeting data on her tablet computer. The intelligence package showed a fortified compound with multiple defensive positions that would require precise artillery fires to neutralize without endangering the assault team. Gun crew assignments are based on readiness and capability, Matthews said without looking up from her screen. Every qualified soldier participates unless they're medically unavailable or assigned to other critical duties. Thompson pressed his argument with the persistence of someone who saw an opportunity to permanently establish Elena's exclusion from combat operations. With respect, ma'am, Rodriguez hasn't completed the Advanced Live Fire Certification Program. Regulations clearly state that uncertified personnel shouldn't participate in direct fire support missions. Elena's jaw tightened as she recognized another of Thompson's bureaucratic manipulations. The advanced certification program he referenced was voluntary training that most soldiers completed during slower operational periods. Thompson's scheduling conflicts and equipment sabotage had prevented Elena from attending the certification sessions, creating the very deficiency he now cited as disqualifying. Sergeant Hayes stepped forward, his expression showing frustration. With Thompson's timing and tactics, Specialist Rodriguez completed all mandatory artillery training and demonstrated proficiency on every required evaluation. She's qualified for this mission under current regulations. The exchange was drawing attention from soldiers throughout the quarters, creating exactly the public confrontation that Elena had worked to avoid. She understood that defending herself in this moment would appear insubordinate to Captain Matthews, but remaining silent would validate Thompson's characterization of her as unsuitable for combat operations. Captain Matthews finally looked up from her intelligence briefing, her expression showing impatience with personnel discussions that were delaying mission preparation. I need 3 gun crews ready for immediate deployment. Assignments are based on availability and current readiness status, period. Thompson's response revealed the depth of his commitment to preventing Elena's participation in significant operations. Ma'am, I formally request that Rodriguez be excluded from this mission based on safety concerns. Her limited experience with complex fire missions could compromise the operation and endanger friendly forces. The formal request created an official record that would require Captain Matthews to make a documented decision about Elena's suitability for combat operations. Thompson had escalated his campaign beyond harassment into direct challenges to her professional qualifications that demanded resolution through command channels. Elena realized that this moment would define not just her immediate participation in the mission, but her entire future in artillery. Thompson had forced a confrontation that would either validate his months of undermining her credibility or provide her with the opportunity she had been waiting for to demonstrate her true capabilities. Captain Matthews, Elena said with measured formality, I request permission to participate in this mission. My training records show qualification on all required artillery systems, and I'm prepared to perform any assigned duties. The request created competing narratives that Matthews would have to evaluate quickly, while managing time pressures from the impending assault. She could either accept Thompson's safety concerns and exclude Elena, validating months of systematic harassment, or allow Elena to participate and risk potential complications. If Thompson's warnings proved accurate, Matthews's decision process was interrupted by an urgent radio transmission from the Special Operations Team preparing for the assault. The team leader's voice carried stress levels that indicated the mission timeline was accelerating beyond original planning parameters. Firebase Jackson, this is Thunder 6, the radio crackled with static interference. Enemy activity suggests our approach may be compromised. We need artillery support ready for immediate firing within 15 minutes of target identification. Any delays could abort the entire operation. The transmission changed the dynamic of personnel discussions. By emphasizing operational urgency over administrative concerns, Matthews's primary responsibility was mission success, and excluding a qualified soldier based on unsubstantiated concerns would reduce her available assets during a time-critical operation. All qualified personnel participate, Matthews announced. With finality, we'll sort out certification issues after the mission is complete. Right now we have soldiers depending on our support, and I need every gun crew at maximum capability. Thompson's expression showed barely controlled anger at his inability to prevent Elena's participation through formal channels. He had exhausted bureaucratic options and now faced the prospect of Elena demonstrating competence in exactly the high-stakes situation he had claimed she couldn't handle. Elena felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as she gathered her equipment and joined the other soldiers preparing for deployment. The opportunity she had waited for was finally arriving, but under circumstances that offered no margin for error or learning curves. Her performance would be evaluated not just by her unit colleagues, but by special operations forces whose lives depended on accurate artillery support. The convoy to the firing position departed forward operating base Jackson as the first hints of dawn appeared on the eastern horizon. Elena rode in the back of a military transport vehicle, reviewing targeting procedures and ballistic calculations while other soldiers conducted equipment checks and discussed tactical approaches to the mission. Specialist Morrison, still loyal to Thompson despite the changing circumstances, made one final attempt to undermine Elena's confidence before they reached the deployment site. "Hope you studied those manuals carefully, Rodriguez," he said with false concern. "Special Ops doesn't give second chances when artillery support goes wrong." Elena's response reflected the calm focus her father had taught her to maintain under pressure. "The calculations are straightforward," she replied simply. "Range, deflection, charge, and fuse settings. Same mathematics we've been practicing, just with higher stakes." Her matter-of-fact tone seemed to surprise Morrison, who had expected nervousness or defensiveness that would validate Thompson's concerns about her readiness. Instead, Elena appeared more centered and confident than she had during any previous interaction, as if the pressure of real combat operations activated capabilities that training exercises couldn't reveal. The firing position was established on an elevated plateau that provided clear fields of fire toward the target area, while offering some protection from potential counter-battery attacks. Elena's gun crew worked with practiced efficiency to prepare their M777 howitzer for immediate firing, conducting safety checks and communications tests that would ensure rapid response when targeting orders arrived. Thompson positioned himself as the primary fire direction controller, a role that would allow him to oversee Elena's performance and potentially intervene if he believed her actions threatened mission success. His presence created additional pressure, but Elena welcomed the scrutiny as an opportunity to demonstrate competence under the most demanding conditions possible. The radio transmission that would change everything came at 0623 hours, just as the assault team reached their final approach positions. The Special Operations Commander's voice carried the controlled urgency of someone executing a complex plan under time pressure. "Firebase Jackson, Thunder 6. We have visual confirmation of the target compound. Multiple defensive positions with heavy weapons emplacements. We need immediate suppression fires on grid coordinates I'm transmitting now. Danger close procedures in effect." Elena felt her heart rate elevate slightly as she realized the significance of the danger close designation. The artillery fires would be delivered within 600 meters of friendly forces, requiring absolute precision to avoid fratricide while effectively neutralizing enemy positions. There would be no opportunity for adjustment rounds or bracketing fires that might reveal friendly locations to enemy observers. Thompson's voice came over the internal communication system with instructions that would test Elena's technical knowledge and mental toughness simultaneously. Grid coordinates received and plotted. Range to target is 11,200 meters. Wind speed 8 knots from the southwest. Temperature 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Calculate firing data for high explosive rounds, charge 7. Impact fuse. Elena's mind immediately began processing the ballistic variables with the systematic approach her father had taught her during their workshop sessions years earlier. The range required specific propellant charges and elevation angles that she calculated rapidly while considering meteorological conditions that would affect projectile flight paths. Her computations were completed within seconds, but she double-checked each calculation before announcing her results to ensure absolute accuracy. The lives of Special Operations soldiers depended on mathematical precision that left no room for errors or approximations. Deflection 4,800 mils, Elena announced clearly. Quadrant elevation is 273 mils. Time of flight 47 seconds. Ready to fire on command. Thompson verified her calculations using the digital fire control computer, his expression showing surprise at the speed and accuracy of her manual computations. Elena had not only provided correct firing data, but had done so faster than most experienced artillery soldiers could achieve using electronic assistance. The moment that would define Elena's career was approaching rapidly as the assault team reported their final preparations for attacking the enemy compound. Everything she had trained for, everything her father had taught her about precision under pressure, would be tested in the next few minutes under circumstances where failure could result in catastrophic consequences for American soldiers depending on her expertise. The radio crackled with the final transmission that would begin the most important artillery mission of Elena's military career. Firebase Jackson, Thunder 6. Commence firing. I repeat, commence firing. American lives are counting on your accuracy. Elena's hands moved across the howitzer's controls with fluid precision as she implemented the firing data she had calculated. Her movements carried the confidence of someone who had visualized this exact sequence thousands of times during training, but never under circumstances where American soldiers' lives hung in the balance of her mathematical accuracy. Deflection 4,800 mils, set, she announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. The artillery piece responded to her adjustments with mechanical precision, its massive barrel shifting to align with coordinates that existed only as numbers on a map but represented life or death for the assault team. Staff Sergeant Thompson monitored every aspect of Elena's procedures, his radio headset crackling with updates from the Special Operations forces who were now depending on artillery support that he had tried to prevent her from providing. His expression showed internal conflict between hoping for mission success and dreading the possibility that Elena might perform flawlessly under conditions he had claimed she couldn't handle. Thunder 6, Firebase Jackson, Thompson transmitted. To the assault team. Artillery is laid and ready for immediate fires. Confirm your final positions before we commence the mission. The response came immediately, carrying urgency that made every soldier at the firing position acutely aware of the tactical situation unfolding 12 kilometers away. Firebase Jackson, Thunder 6. We are in position and ready for fires. Enemy stronghold is showing increased activity. We need those rounds on target now. Elena made final adjustments to the howitzer's elevation mechanism, her movements deliberate and controlled despite time pressures that would have rattled less experienced soldiers. She had accepted not just the technical challenge of accurate gunnery, but the psychological weight of proving her competence to every person who had questioned her presence in artillery. Captain Matthews positioned herself where she could observe Elena's performance while maintaining communication with higher command elements, coordinating the broader tactical operation. Her career depended on mission success, but she also recognized that this moment would determine Elena's future in artillery and potentially influence policies regarding women in combat roles. "Rodriguez," Matthews called out, "I need absolute confidence in your firing solution. Lives depend on getting this right the first time." Elena's response reflected the quiet certainty her father had instilled through years of teaching precision and patience. "Ma'am, my calculations are correct. The rounds will hit their intended targets." The statement carried weight beyond technical confidence into territory of professional reputation and personal honor. Elena had moved beyond simply performing assigned duties into accepting responsibility for outcomes that would reverberate far beyond this single mission. Thompson's radio crackled with another transmission from the assault team, this one carrying increased urgency as tactical conditions deteriorated. "Around the target compound. Firebase Jackson, enemy forces are maneuvering toward our position. We need immediate suppression fires to prevent encirclement. Time is critical." Elena felt the familiar sensation of time slowing down as her mind entered the focused state her father had described from his own combat experiences. External pressures and distractions faded into background noise as she concentrated solely on the mechanical and mathematical requirements for delivering accurate artillery fires under extreme time constraints. The howitzer's breech mechanism closed with metallic finality as Elena completed her preparations, signaling readiness to fire the first round in what would become the most scrutinized artillery mission of her career. Every aspect of her performance would be analyzed, evaluated, and remembered by soldiers whose opinions would shape her professional future. "Gun laid, ammunition loaded, ready to fire," Elena announced through the communication system, her voice carrying across the firing position with clarity that surprised soldiers who had grown accustomed to her quiet demeanor during routine operations. Thompson hesitated for several seconds before responding, his internal struggle visible to everyone present. He held the authority to delay or modify the mission, but doing so would require justification that could cost lives if the assault team was indeed facing encirclement by enemy forces. "Thunder 6, Firebase Jackson," Thompson finally transmitted. "Shot over." The radio response came immediately. "Shot out." Elena's finger moved to the firing mechanism with deliberate precision. Her entire body aligned with the howitzer, as if she and the artillery piece had become a single instrument of mathematical precision. Years of training, months of harassment, and a lifetime of preparation culminated in this single moment of applied physics and geometry. The howitzer's report echoed across the plateau with thunderous intensity, sending a 95-pound high explosive projectile arcing through the dawn sky toward coordinates that Elena had calculated using knowledge inherited from her father and refined through systematic military training. The recoil shook the ground beneath their feet as the artillery piece absorbed forces that would have crushed an unprepared operator. "Shot over," Thompson transmitted, his voice carrying professional formality that concealed personal emotions. About Elena's performance. "Shot out," came the immediate response from the assault team. Elena was already preparing for the second round, her movements flowing seamlessly from firing procedures into reload operations that would enable rapid follow-up fires if the initial impact required adjustment. Her efficiency impressed even Thompson, who had expected hesitation or confusion from someone he considered inadequately prepared for combat operations. The 47 seconds of flight time stretched endlessly as everyone at the firing position waited for impact reports that would determine whether Elena's calculations had achieved the precision required for danger-close operations. A miss of even 50 meters could result in fratricide, while falling short of the target would fail to suppress enemy positions, threatening the assault team. "Firebase Jackson, Thunder 6, the radio finally crackled with the transmission everyone had been waiting for. "Splash, direct hit on primary target. Enemy position neutralized. Outstanding shooting. Request immediate repeat on secondary coordinates. I'm transmitting now. Elena felt momentarily dizzy as adrenaline and relief, combined with the realization that her first combat artillery fire had achieved perfect accuracy under the most demanding conditions possible. The months of systematic harassment and professional undermining suddenly seemed irrelevant compared to the tactical success she had just delivered. Thompson's expression showed complex emotions. As he processed the assault team's enthusiastic praise for artillery support he had tried to prevent Elena from providing. His months of arguing about her incompetence had been definitively refuted by performance under actual combat conditions. "Outstanding work, Rodriguez," Captain Matthews called out, her voice carrying genuine admiration for technical competence demonstrated under extreme pressure. "Prepare for immediate follow-up fires on the secondary targets." Elena nodded acknowledgement while reviewing the new coordinates transmitted by the assault team. The secondary targets required different ballistic solutions due to varying ranges and angles, testing her ability to recalculate firing data rapidly while maintaining the accuracy that had characterized her. Initial success. The mathematical requirements were more complex for the secondary mission because the targets were positioned at different elevations and ranges, requiring Elena to adjust for multiple variables simultaneously while working under time constraints imposed by tactical necessities. Her mental calculations processed meteorological data, projectile characteristics, and geometric relationships with the systematic approach her father had taught her. "Deflection 5,200 mils, Elena announced after completing her rapid computations. "Quadrant elevation is 281 mils. Charge 7, high explosive, impact fuse. Ready for immediate firing." Thompson verified her calculations with increasing confidence in her mathematical abilities, his verification process revealing accuracy that exceeded standards typically achieved by experienced artillery soldiers working with electronic support systems. Elena had consistently demonstrated manual computation skills that rivaled digital fire control computers. The second round impacted with equal precision, earning another enthusiastic response from the assault team and confirming Elena's capability to maintain accuracy across multiple targets under varying tactical conditions. Her performance was transitioning from single successful engagement into sustained demonstration of exceptional artillery skills. "Firebase Jackson, Thunder 6, the radio transmitted with obvious excitement. "Another direct hit. Enemy secondary positions are neutralized. We are proceeding with the assault phase. Your fires have been absolutely critical to mission success." Elena felt the weight of months of doubt and harassment lifting from her shoulders as the tactical situation validated everything she had claimed about her qualifications and capabilities. The assault team's praise represented recognition from combat veterans who evaluated performance based solely on results rather than preconceptions about gender or physical appearance. Captain Matthews approached Elena's position with expressions that combined professional respect with personal admiration for grace under pressure. "Rodriguez, I've been observing artillery operations for 8 years, and I've rarely seen such consistent accuracy under these conditions. Your performance today has been exemplary." The public praise in front of soldiers who had witnessed months of systematic harassment created a dramatic reversal of Elena's standing within the unit. Thompson's campaign to undermine her credibility had been definitively refuted by demonstrated competence in the most demanding circumstances her profession could provide. Specialist Morrison, who had participated in the harassment campaign with enthusiastic loyalty to Thompson, now found himself witnessing the collapse of every assumption he had accepted about Elena's capabilities. Her mathematical precision and calm performance under extreme pressure challenged fundamental beliefs about who belonged in artillery and what qualifications actually mattered for combat effectiveness. The radio transmission that would complete Elena's vindication came as the assault team reported successful completion of their primary mission objectives. Fire-based Jackson, Thunder 6. Compound secured. High-value targets captured. Mission successful. Your artillery support was absolutely critical to our success. Outstanding professional performance by your gun crews. Elena had not just proven her competence. She had demonstrated exceptional capability that earned praise from Special Operations forces known for demanding the highest standards of performance from supporting units. The contrast with Thompson's characterizations of her as a liability became impossible for anyone to ignore or rationalize. Thompson faced the immediate challenge of reconciling months of arguments about Elena's incompetence with her undeniable success in the most critical mission their unit had undertaken during the current deployment. His credibility as a judge of artillery capability had been fundamentally undermined by his consistent misjudgments about Elena's qualifications. The successful mission created ripple effects that extended far beyond Elena's personal vindication into broader questions about evaluation methods, assignment policies, and the systematic exclusion of qualified personnel based on demographic characteristics rather than demonstrated competence. Her performance had implications for military effectiveness that transcended individual career concerns. As the immediate tactical situation stabilized and the artillery crews began post-mission procedures, Elena found herself at the center of attention from soldiers who had previously maintained careful distance to avoid association with someone Thompson had marked for exclusion. The social dynamics of the unit were shifting as rapidly as tactical conditions had changed during the assault operation. Elena's acceptance of the challenge had evolved beyond personal vindication into a demonstration that would influence policies and attitudes affecting future generations of women in combat roles. Her mathematical precision under pressure had created precedents that could not be easily dismissed or forgotten by military leaders evaluating similar situations. The silence that followed the mission's successful completion carried a weight that every soldier at the firing position could feel. Elena stood beside the howitzer that had become her instrument of vindication, methodically conducting post-firing procedures while the magnitude of her achievement settled over the assembled artillery crew like morning fog lifting from the plateau. Staff Sergeant Thompson stared at the radio that had delivered unequivocal praise for artillery support he had actively opposed Elena providing. His face showed the complex emotions of someone confronting the complete collapse of assumptions that had guided months of professional decisions and personal judgments about military capability and gender roles in combat. Captain Matthews broke the silence with an announcement that would formalize Elena's transformation from outcast to exemplary soldier. I'm recommending Specialist Rodriguez for immediate promotion consideration and assignment to Advanced Fire Direction Specialist training. Her performance today represents exactly the kind of precision and reliability our artillery operations require. The recommendation carried implications far beyond individual recognition into territory of official military acknowledgement that Elena's capabilities exceeded standard expectations for her rank and experience level. Thompson's months of arguing about her incompetence had been replaced by command-level praise for exceptional performance under the most demanding conditions. Specialist Morrison approached Elena's position with visible awkwardness, his previous participation in the harassment campaign now appearing foolish and unprofessional in light of her demonstrated expertise. His voice carried the uncertainty of someone attempting to rebuild relationships after supporting systematic persecution of a colleague. Rodriguez, Morrison began hesitantly, I wanted to say that your shooting today was incredible. I've never seen anyone calculate firing data that quickly or accurately under pressure like that. Elena's response reflected the maturity and professionalism her father had instilled through years of teaching about character and dignity under difficult circumstances. Thank you, she said simply, without reference to Morrison's previous behavior or attempts to make him uncomfortable about his participation in Thompson's campaign. The grace of her response seemed to surprise Morrison, who had expected resentment or coldness that would have been entirely justified given his recent treatment of her. Instead, Elena demonstrated the same measured approach to interpersonal relationships that characterized her technical work, focusing on present circumstances rather than dwelling on past grievances. Private Sullivan, the youngest member of the harassment group, struggled visibly with reconciling Elena's performance against months of accepting Thompson's characterizations of her as unsuitable for artillery work. His military experience was too limited to provide context for evaluating exceptional performance, making Elena's achievement both impressive and confusing. "How did you learn to calculate firing data so fast?" Sullivan asked with genuine curiosity. "Even the digital computers take longer than you did for those solutions." Elena's explanation revealed aspects of her background that no one in the unit had previously understood or investigated. "My father taught me ballistics and mathematics from childhood. He was an artillery forward observer in Vietnam, and he believed that understanding the science behind procedures was as important as memorizing the procedures themselves." The revelation about her father's military service provided context that reframed Elena's quiet confidence and systematic approach to artillery operations. She wasn't just a recent recruit who had completed training programs. She was the daughter of a combat veteran who had inherited both technical knowledge and professional values from someone with actual battlefield experience. Thompson's expression darkened as he processed the implications of information that had been available through Elena's personnel file, but which he had never bothered to review. His opposition to her presence in artillery had been based on superficial assumptions rather than investigation of her actual qualifications and background. Captain Matthews's interest was immediately captured by Elena's family military history. "Your father was a forward observer? That's one of the most technically demanding jobs in artillery. Forward observers need to understand ballistics, meteorology, and tactical coordination at an expert level." Elena nodded, her voice carrying quiet pride in her father's service and sacrifice. "He taught me that artillery is applied mathematics under pressure. Precision isn't about being perfect. It's about understanding exactly what you're trying to accomplish and having the discipline to execute correctly every time." The philosophy behind Elena's approach to artillery became clear to everyone present as they recognized the source of her exceptional performance. She had been trained not just by military instructors, but by a combat veteran who understood the life-and-death implications of mathematical accuracy in artillery operations. Sergeant First Class Hayes, who had attempted to protect Elena from the worst aspects of Thompson's harassment, approached with expressions of admiration and professional respect that reflected his recognition of truly exceptional capability. "Rodriguez," Hayes said formally, "in 15 years of artillery operations, I've never witnessed manual computation skills like you demonstrated today. Your accuracy under pressure exceeded anything I've seen from soldiers with years more experience." The praise from Hayes carried special significance because his reputation for professional competence and integrity made his evaluations particularly credible among artillery soldiers. His public recognition of Elena's exceptional performance provided authoritative confirmation that her success wasn't accidental or lucky but represented sustained excellence. Elena's response maintained the humble professionalism that had characterized her behavior throughout months of systematic harassment. "I had good teachers and thorough training, Sergeant. Today's mission just required applying what I learned under different circumstances." The understated response seemed to increase rather than diminish the impact of her achievement, demonstrating confidence without arrogance and competence without boastfulness. Elena had proven her capabilities while maintaining the character traits that define professional soldiers rather than seeking personal glory or vindication. Thompson found himself isolated as other soldiers gravitated toward Elena to offer congratulations and ask questions about her techniques and background. His months of cultivating opposition to her presence had been swept away by a single demonstration of competence that made his arguments appear petty and, quote, unprofessional. The radio crackled with another transmission from the Special Operations team, this one directed specifically at Elena rather than the artillery unit generally. Firebase Jackson, this is Thunder 6 Actual. I want to personally thank whoever calculated those firing solutions. That was some of the most accurate artillery support I've experienced in 12 years of special operations. Elena keyed the radio microphone with steady hands, her voice carrying the professional bearing appropriate for communication with senior special operations personnel. Thunder 6 Actual, this is Specialist Rodriguez. Thank you for the recognition. Sir, it was an honor to provide fire support for your mission. The direct communication between Elena and Special Operations leadership created an official record of her exceptional performance that would follow her throughout her military career. Such recognition from elite units was rarely given and never forgotten by promotion boards and assignment officers. Captain Matthews seized the opportunity to gather intelligence about Elena's full capabilities and potential for advanced assignments. Rodriguez, what other technical training do you have beyond standard artillery certification? Your performance suggests knowledge that goes well beyond basic requirements. Elena's answer revealed the depth of preparation she had brought to military service preparation that Thompson's superficial evaluation had failed to discover or appreciate. I completed advanced mathematics and physics courses in high school, studied ballistics and meteorology independently, and worked with precision machinery in my father's workshop for years before enlisting. The comprehensive background explained Elena's exceptional performance while highlighting the inadequacy of evaluation methods that focused on demographic characteristics rather than actual qualifications and capabilities. Thompson's assessment process had ignored relevant information while emphasizing irrelevant factors. Specialist Santos, who had offered quiet support during Elena's most difficult period, approached with obvious relief and satisfaction at seeing justice finally delivered through demonstrated competence. I'm so proud of you, Santos said quietly. You never let them break your spirit or make you doubt yourself. Elena's response reflected appreciation for Santos's solidarity during difficult times while maintaining focus on professional rather than personal aspects of her vindication. Thank you for believing in me when that wasn't easy. Today was about proving that good training and preparation matter more than assumptions about who belongs where. The philosophical statement encapsulated Elena's approach to the entire situation, focusing on systemic issues rather than personal grievances and emphasizing competence-based evaluation over demographic considerations. Her success had implications beyond individual vindication into broader questions about military effectiveness and personnel policies. Thompson's isolation became more pronounced as soldiers who had supported his harassment campaign began distancing themselves from positions that now appeared obviously wrong and professionally damaging. His credibility as a judge of artillery capability had been fundamentally undermined by Elena's performance. The transformation in unit dynamics accelerated as Elena became the center of positive attention from soldiers seeking to learn from her techniques and benefit from her expertise. The same technical knowledge that Thompson had dismissed as irrelevant had proven decisive under actual combat conditions. Captain Matthews made another announcement that would formalize Elena's new status within the unit and the broader artillery community. I'm forwarding a detailed report of today's mission to Division Headquarters with specific emphasis on Specialist Rodriguez's exceptional performance. This kind of precision under pressure deserves recognition at the highest levels. Elena felt the weight of months of systematic harassment finally lifting as official recognition replaced organized persecution. Her patient endurance and professional focus had been vindicated by performance that no one could dismiss or minimize through bureaucratic manipulation or social pressure. The revelation of Elena's true capabilities had transformed not just her standing within the unit, but the fundamental assumptions that had guided personnel decisions and social dynamics. Thompson's campaign had created the very conditions that enabled Elena to demonstrate excellence that might otherwise have remained hidden. During routine training operations, the irony was not lost on Elena that Thompson's determination to exclude her from significant missions had ultimately provided the high-stakes opportunity where her exceptional abilities could be displayed most dramatically. His harassment had backfired completely, creating circumstances that elevated her from outcast to exemplary soldier in a single morning. As the artillery crews completed post-mission procedures and prepared for return to forward operating base Jackson, Elena found herself surrounded by colleagues who now viewed her as a valuable asset rather than an unwelcome intrusion. The social transformation was as complete as her professional vindication. 3 weeks after the mission that changed everything, Elena stood before a formation of new artillery recruits at Forward Operating Base Jackson, teaching advanced ballistics calculations to soldiers eager to learn from someone whose precision had saved lives under combat conditions. Her transformation from outcast to instructor represented more than personal vindication. It symbolized a fundamental shift in how the military evaluated capability and potential. Staff Sergeant Thompson had requested a transfer to another unit, unable to reconcile his months of harassment with Elena's undeniable excellence. His departure removed the primary source of systematic resistance while creating space for healthier unit dynamics based on professional competence rather than demographic prejudices. Captain Matthews had promoted Elena to team leader for the most complex artillery missions, recognizing that her mathematical expertise and calm performance under pressure made her invaluable for operations requiring absolute precision. The young woman, once considered too small for artillery, now directed fire support for the base's most critical tactical operations. Elena's teaching methods reflected her father's patient approach to technical education, emphasizing understanding over memorization and practical application over theoretical knowledge. Her students included soldiers who had previously participated in harassing her, now seeking guidance from someone whose expertise had been proven under the ultimate test of combat effectiveness. Artillery is about serving others, Elena told her class during a morning instruction session. Every calculation we make, every round we fire, exists to protect fellow soldiers who depend on our accuracy. Personal conflicts and unit politics disappear when lives are on the line. The philosophy behind her words had guided Elena through months of systematic exclusion, while maintaining focus on professional excellence rather than personal grievances. Her success demonstrated that competence and character could overcome organized opposition when combined with patience and unwavering commitment to standards. Specialist Morrison approached Elena after the training session, his expression showing genuine respect that replaced the mockery that had characterized their earlier interactions. "Elena," he said, using her first name for the first time, "I owe you an apology for how I treated you. Your performance opened my eyes about what really matters in this job." Elena's response maintained the grace that had defined her conduct throughout the entire ordeal. "We're all learning and growing, Morrison. What matters now is that we work together effectively to support our mission and protect each other." The forgiveness she offered came without conditions or demands for additional recognition, reflecting emotional maturity that impressed soldiers who had witnessed her journey from harassment target to respected leader. Elena had proven that excellence of character was as important as technical expertise for military effectiveness. Division headquarters had requested Elena's input on artillery training programs, recognizing that her unique background and demonstrated capabilities could improve preparation for future soldiers. Her recommendations emphasized mathematical fundamentals and stress inoculation, preparing recruits for the mental demands of precision, shooting under combat pressure. Elena's success had ripple effects throughout the artillery community as other units requested information about her training methods and performance techniques. Military publications featured articles about precision gunnery that referenced her achievement. Though Elena consistently declined personal interviews that might detract from her focus on professional responsibilities, during quiet moments, Elena would call her father to share experiences that vindicated years of patient instruction and moral guidance. Miguel's pride in his daughter's achievements was tempered by understanding of the challenges she had overcome to reach this point of professional recognition and personal satisfaction. "Mija," Miguel said during one of their conversations, "you've proven that precision and patience can overcome any obstacle. But more importantly, you've shown that character matters as much as competence in defining who we become." Elena had kept her father's dog tags throughout the deployment, wearing them as a reminder of the values and technical knowledge that had sustained her through the most difficult period of her military career. The silver medal had warmed against her chest during the mission that proved her worth, connecting her achievement to the legacy of service and sacrifice that had shaped her approach to life and duty. 6 months after her vindication, Elena received orders for assignment to the Army's premier artillery unit at Fort Bragg, where her expertise would support the most demanding special operations missions. The assignment represented recognition at the highest levels of military leadership that her capabilities deserved the most challenging and important responsibilities. Elena's story had become part of Forward Operating Base Jackson's institutional memory, told to new arrivals as an example of perseverance and professional excellence overcoming systemic barriers. Her legacy extended beyond individual achievement into broader changes in how the military identified and developed exceptional talent. Regardless of demographic characteristics, the quiet woman who had been deemed too small for artillery had fired the shot that ended not just an enemy siege, but outdated assumptions about who could excel in combat roles. Her precision under pressure had created ripples of change that would benefit future generations of soldiers seeking to serve their country with distinction and honor. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.